can we get your reaction to the Spring Statement today?
Well, it was a bit of a non-event, really, and also just very sad. Labour government, 18 months into office, unemployment going up, inflation going up, youth unemployment going up, no change in the local housing allowance, no end to the family welfare cap, so that means 25,000 children still go into poverty despite the lifting of the two-child benefit, big increase in defence expenditure, and then of course all the predictions on inflation and all the other predictions that go with it are going to be knocked out of the water, possibly by the end of today, as gas prices have already gone up a great deal, oil prices rising generally across the whole world. That's going to have a big effect, and I think it's possible that by June, when the next round of gas price increases come in for consumers, the government will then have to kick in with its support system to prevent them going too high. So the 21 billion headroom that Rachel Reeves claims she has, I think will be gone. It's not a great outlook.
She said that she's focusing on the cost of living. Is she doing enough, or what more can she do to help normal working people?
Well, a number of things she could do. One is obviously to increase the living wage. Secondly, to take the lowest paid people out of taxation altogether by freezing the tax threshold in the budget at 12,500. That means that as inflation goes on, and we now see an increase in inflation, then about 500,000 more people will be going into taxation. These are people with an income of 12,500 a year, which is very, very low. So it would kind of help a great deal if she did two things. One is to raise the threshold beyond the 12,500 and put that up to, say, 15,000, rising to 20,000 longer term. And obviously, to balance that, a new rate of taxation at the other end of the scale, that would make a massive difference to the lowest paid and the poorest people in our society. Secondly, by raising the local housing allowance, that would mean that the numbers of people in receipt of universal credit who have to subsidise their own rent because it's way beyond the housing benefit level they're being paid would mean that they would be considerably better off. But a more radical solution, which I think this government is too frightened to take, would be to bring in rent controls based on each local authority area and link the local housing allowance to a rent control level, which would mean that actually the public would save a great deal of money because they'd be paying less money out to private landlords. And so there's a number of areas that could help. The issue of student debt has come up a great deal. Student debts are absolutely massive, as everybody knows. Everybody also knows that at some point, some government is going to have to face the reality that most of those debts are never going to be paid. So this huge debt just grows and grows. And despite them privatising the debt and handing it over to debt collectors, they're not getting the money back. They're not going to get it back because so many graduates are so low paid, it's not going to be collected. So maybe we should do something more intelligent and say that we value university and college education, therefore we won't charge fees for it. That would be something really revolutionary, wouldn't it? And do you know what? That used to be in a manifesto.
Dave, can I just get your initial reaction to that Spring Statement?
Well, it's hugely disappointing. The Chancellor's painted herself into a corner by having one fiscal event a year, which doesn't take account of the chaos she's created herself in the economy. She's now hamstrung. She can't do anything about that until she has her subsequent budget in October. And there's lots that needs fixed given the problems she's created with growth and inflation and unemployment. The latter one having soared to 5%. It's got scheduled to increase to 5.3% by the summertime. There are real intractable problems in the economy, none of which the Chancellor sought to address today.
And just on Scotland specifically, what are those real big economic challenges that you see facing Scottish voters?
Well, the Chancellor's away to hike duty on fuel. She's not going to make any concessions towards the energy profits levy in Scotland. And Scottish businesses face the same challenges as the rest of the United Kingdom, whereby the problems that they've got with the cost of living crisis, people are going out more, hospitality is in crisis, the cost of doing business as well as the cost of living is in crisis. The Chancellor didn't address any of that. So, and that's what's feeding into the employment figures. As businesses move more into survival survival mode, then they stop recruiting, and they stop recruiting people at the very entry stages of employment, which has a disproportionate effect on our young people. This is a crisis of the Chancellor's own making, and she appears to not even understand the problems of the economy, much less have any solutions for them.
And you spoke about young people there. Big talking point at the moment is youth unemployment and student loans. Do you think this government is doing enough for young people? And in regards to those two things, what would you like to see happen in that area?
Well, it's particularly challenging when you see people who come from a generation where their university education was funded, telling people who are going through university now that there's no money left for them. I mean, it's pretty galling. But in Scotland, we've demonstrated under the SNP that you can make the sums add up when it comes to properly funding tuition fees. Now, of course, students in Scotland have an element of debt as well, but that's for the cost of getting themselves through university, not for the cost of their course, because we believe fundamentally it's about your ability to learn, not your ability to pay. So the UK government, as they maladminister education and higher education in particular in England, could take a leaf out of Scotland's book and have a far more progressive approach to how we fund higher education, which is a public good. It's not just the recipient of that education that benefits, the whole of society benefits from a higher level of education.
And you mentioned about gas prices earlier. Obviously, because of the conflict in Iran, they've spiked, and this could cause huge issues for consumers, especially if their energy bills go up after the July. What do you want the Chancellor to do in terms of addressing that if those bills are still set to be really high after July?
Well, the House of Commons was waiting for the Chancellor to acknowledge what's happened to the global price of gas today, and she gave it a fleeting reference with no instruction on what she would do if these prices endure. That was the question I asked her, because her forecast for how the economy is going to perform, or rather the OBR's forecast, upon which she's relying to praise herself, are all based on a therm price of 75 pence. The therm price is now 150 pence. So the Chancellor's figures are all at sea, and she doesn't acknowledge that. So she's got big problems coming down the line, but so does business and households. And what I pressed her on today was, what support will you give households and businesses in the event of another enduring energy price spike? And she had nothing to offer.
Can I just get your initial reaction to that Spring Statement?
The Spring Statement from the Chancellor continues the trail of disappointment from this government. We saw no action to reverse the terrible increase in national insurance contributions, the jobs tax on businesses. We saw nothing to accelerate the rebuilding of our hospitals that we've been promised for some time, including in Eastbourne. And we saw no announcement whatsoever to properly deepen our relationship with the European Union via a new customs union to help our economy grow again. This was an utter disappointment, and we had nothing new today.
And obviously a big talking point today is about those rising gas prices because of the conflict in the Middle East. What would you like to see the Chancellor do in terms of that?
Well, one of the things in the long term that we need the Chancellor and this government to do is invest much more in homegrown renewable energy. In a global environment that is more complex, more unpredictable than ever, we need to have the confidence that we can generate as much energy ourselves as possible so that we can resist shocks in our external global environment. So we need to see much more on that from this government.
And another big topic around the economy is student loans. That's also tied into youth unemployment, which is a serious concern at the moment. Obviously, Lib Dems take a lot of slack, or they take a lot of hits about student loans. What would you like to see change there, maybe around the Plan 2 schemes?
Students are getting ripped off completely. I was the last year before Plan 2. Lots of my contemporaries are paying exactly what they are being asked by the government, except their overall bill is going up year on year on year. That's not fair. That needs to change. I was out campaigning against those tuition fee increases on the streets behind me back in 2010, and I still stand here today to say that something big needs to change. The government needs to reverse the freezing of the repayment thresholds, which is bringing people into those repayments much sooner than they otherwise should. And the government needs to restore maintenance grants for many more students, so that they borrow less just to afford the basics of their university life.
And obviously a big topic as well is cost of living. Do you think this government's doing enough to get that down, and what would the Liberal Democrats want to see in terms of that?
Well, the challenges around the cost of living are just as acute as they've ever been for so many people across my own patch of Eastbourne and across the country. In fact, my hometown, up until recently, hosted the busiest food bank in the country. What do we need to see? Well, we need to see the government invest in building much more housing, especially social housing across the country. That can help to resolve the housing emergency we face in, which I think is one of the sharpest parts of our cost of living crisis.
And just lastly, we heard Ed Davey talk yesterday about how he wanted expats, especially in the Gulf region, to pay some form of tax, especially because now the government is making efforts to evacuate them from the region. Can you just go into that a bit more, explain what exactly you'd want to see there?
Well, my biggest concern, and indeed the thing that has been occupying most of my time over the last couple of days, have been many of those British nationals who are in the Middle East and who are facing catastrophe. And there are some people who are particularly vulnerable who we need to support to get home as soon as possible. That's been my focus. I've got a local resident who is out there in Dubai with a 6-month-old baby who relies on baby formula, and she cannot access the baby formula she needs in Dubai. I'm trying to get that situation resolved. We've got a young man who was travelling back from India, stopped over in Dubai, became terribly unwell, is now in a Dubai hospital paying £1,000 a day in medical bills just to get better. My focus is on resolving those issues.
So firstly, Mel Stride, can I just get a reaction to the Spring Statement today?
Well, I don't think we really heard much that we didn't already know, which is that the public finances are in a very difficult situation. We know that growth now has been forecast to be downgraded this year compared to the original forecast, and equally unemployment forecast to be higher this year, next year and the year after, and a very anemic growth. What we really needed from the Chancellor was a clear plan to get government spending under control, to get taxes down and get the economy growing.
And so Rachel Reeves was saying she wants to sort the cost of living, and this was a problem that some would say actually began under a Conservative government. What do you think the public should believe now to think that you would be any different to Rachel Reeves?
The big distinction between us and Labour is we believe in living within our means, getting public spending under control, particularly the welfare bill. If you get people off benefits and into work, you can use those savings, firstly, to bear down on the size of our debt, which is very costly and makes us fragile, but equally get taxes down, particularly on hard-working people and those businesses that we look to grow the economy.
And would there be a lower minimum wage under the Tories?
Well, we are committed to the minimum wage. We were the party that actually brought in the national living wage, and that's our position on that.
I don't know if you've seen that Kemi tweeted this, but she said that the Spring Statement was written by ChatGPT. Would you agree with that?
Well, it was very uninspiring,
Right.
if that's what she meant by it. Absolutely. I mean, Rachel just seemed to stand there, run her finger along each line and read it out. I don't think she gave us much cause for hope, I wouldn't say.
So would you say it was written by ChatGPT?
Well, I don't know. You have to ask Rachel Reeves that, I think. Yeah.
Do you believe the special relationship is ruined? Obviously, Trump said he's very disappointed in Starmer. Does this concern
Well, it's
you?
clearly, it does a lot.
Yeah.
America is our most important and key ally, and for the Prime Minister, through his dithering around on this issue of Iran and our support for America, has clearly soured the relationship. And I think we should all be very worried about this. This is a time when we need to be standing shoulder to shoulder with our allies. As I have to say, the Australians, the Canadians and others did. We should have done the same.
And just going back to the Gorton and Denton by-election that happened recently, obviously the Tories won just 706 votes. And I saw your column in the Mail on Sunday. You described Reeves as out of touch. What would you say makes the Tories not out of touch?
We're listening very hard
to the British people about the things that are of concern to them: living standards, getting lower inflation, creating jobs, getting taxes down, particularly on businesses. And we are making it clear how we can make progress, controlling public spending, getting those taxes down, getting the debt down. I think that's what people want. They want a credible, grown-up party that has clear, good plans for a stronger economy, and that's what we're focused on.
And if you were in government, what would you do to help struggling grads with their student loans?
So we've made it very clear that under the Plan 2 loans, that's those that were taken on between 2012 and 2023, we would be reducing the interest rate there from RPI, which is a measure of inflation, plus 3%. We're taking that 3% off, so bringing the interest down so there's no real interest rate payment on those loans. And we think that's really important because too many young people often doing degrees that don't actually mean that they're earning lots more money as a consequence, and they're getting saddled up with too much debt. So big, bold offer to young people, along with a £5,000 tax cut on that first job. That's one of our policies as well.
And just briefly on reform, do you believe, as Rachel Reeves said, that Reform UK has become a Tory tribute act?
Well, I think what they are is a bunch of fantasy economists. That's the problem. They went into the last election with £140 billion of unfunded spending and tax commitments. Their offer to pubs and high streets has a £10 billion black hole in it. And yet what we heard the Reform spokesman say on Radio 4 was, well, I don't care about the numbers. The numbers actually matter. We've seen in the past where it leads when you don't care about the numbers. We as a party do. We stand for fiscal responsibility and a grown-up approach to the economy.
Brilliant.